A lot of fans didn't notice it at first, but episode 4 just changed how we see the entire world of Yellowstone. For years, we watched the Dutton family as the heroes of the story. We stood beside them, we trusted them, and we believed they were doing what was right to protect their land. But in Marshals, something feels different. Suddenly, the same family that once looked powerful and respected now looks dangerous in the eyes of other people. And that one small shift is quietly turning the story into something much deeper. Episode 4 was not just another episode. It was the moment the show reminded us that this is still part of the Yellowstone world. And the consequences of the Dutton legacy are starting to show from a completely new angle. Now let's talk about the biggest change we saw in this episode. One of the most interesting things about Marshals is the way it changes our perspective. In Yellowstone, the story always followed the Dutton family. Because of that, we naturally supported them. When they fought someone, we believed they had a good reason. When they made tough decisions, we understood why they did it. But in this show, the camera is showing us the story through different eyes. We are seeing how outsiders look at the Dutton name, and that changes everything. When Harry and the Clee family talk about Casey and the Duttons, they don't see heroes. They see people who might be dangerous. They see a family that has a long history of violence, power, and control. And when you think about it from their point of view, their anger actually starts to make sense. For years, the Duttons have made enemies. Some of those enemies lost land, some lost power, and some even lost family members. So now when someone like Harry starts digging into Casey's past, it doesn't feel random. It feels like someone finally trying to challenge the Dutton legacy. This is exactly what episode 4 started to show more clearly. Harry is not just curious anymore. He is determined. He wants proof that Casey crossed the line. He wants evidence that the killing of Carson Clell was not just self-defense. And if he can prove that, then everything could change for Casey. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. Every step Harry takes seems to fail. One of the most important moments in the episode happens when Harry tries to use Andrea to prove that Casey acted illegally. This was a moment where things could have gone very badly for Casey. If Andrea had agreed with Harry, it could have opened the door for a serious investigation. But instead, something unexpected happened. Andrea stood up for Casey. Not only that, Miles and Belle also supported the truth that Carson attacked first. That moment told us something very important about Casey's place within the Marshals team. Casey is respected. Casey is trusted. And most importantly, Casey is not alone. That is a big problem for Harry, because investigations like this only work when people inside the team start doubting each other. But right now, the opposite is happening. The team is standing together, and Casey is at the center of that loyalty. This shows us something about Casey's character that fans of Yellowstone already know very well. Casey may have a hard past, but he protects the people who work with him. He does not betray his team. And because of that, the people around him are willing to defend him when things get difficult. But even though Harry failed this time, that does not mean he is going to stop. In fact, episode 4 makes it clear that Harry is becoming more focused on this mission. When someone becomes this determined, they usually start looking for help in other places. And that is where another important name enters the story again, Randall Clay. At this point, it feels very possible that Randall could become Harry's strongest ally in the fight against Casey. Randall already has personal reasons to hate the Duttons, and if Harry offers him a chance for revenge, he might take it. If that happens, the conflict in the show could become much bigger than just an investigation. It could turn into a personal war, and that is what makes this storyline so exciting moving forward. Right now, the show is building tension slowly. Harry is pushing forward, Casey is standing strong, and the Marshals team is trying to stay united. But in shows connected to Yellowstone, peace never lasts for long. Someone always makes a move that changes everything. Episode 4 felt like the moment before the storm. The characters are starting to choose sides. The trust inside the team is being tested. And at the same time, the past of the Dutton family is quietly returning to create new problems. The question now is not just whether Harry will succeed in proving something against Casey. The real question is how far this conflict will go once more people get involved. And if episode 4 is any sign of what is coming, then the story is only getting started. Everyone thought the story would slow down after episode 4. But something very important actually started growing quietly in the background. A storyline that many fans of Yellowstone have been waiting to see again. And surprisingly, it all began with a crash that could have ended very differently. When the helicopter went down, it felt like one of those moments where anything could happen. The situation was chaotic, dangerous, and uncertain. For a few seconds, it looked like Tom Weaver might not survive. But what made this moment powerful was not just the danger, it was what came after. Casey and Pete did everything they could to save him. They did not give up, even when the situation looked almost impossible. That rescue scene quietly reminded us of something important about Casey. No matter what people say about the Duttons, Casey still chooses to help people when it matters most. And this moment is exactly why Tom Weaver's arrival in the story feels so important. Because Tom is not just another character passing through the show. He represents something that has been missing from Marshals since the beginning: the ranch life. Many viewers who came from Yellowstone expected to see more of that world, the land, cattle business, the people who live their lives around ranch work. But until now, the show has focused more on law enforcement and investigations. Episode 4 may have just opened the door to bring that classic feeling back. After surviving such a serious accident, Tom's reaction was very interesting. Instead of just thanking Casey and moving on, he offered something bigger. He wants to help with the cattle business. And this is where the story begins to change direction. Because if Casey accepts Tom's help, this could mean new opportunities, new partnerships, and possibly new conflicts tied to land and business, something that has always been at the heart of Yellowstone. But that is not the only reason Tom's presence matters. There is another part of this story that might become even more important as the episodes continue: his daughter, Dolly. When Dolly and Casey started interacting, there was a small but noticeable connection between them. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, natural, and a little emotional. The kind of connection that writers usually build slowly before turning it into something meaningful. And if you pay close attention to their scenes, the show is already planting the seeds for something more. Now, this is where things become complicated for Casey, because we all know that Monica's death is still fresh in his life. Casey is not someone who moves on quickly. He carries his memories, and those memories still affect him deeply. That is why the idea of a new relationship is such a big step for his character. It would mean Casey is finally allowing himself to move forward again. Dolly might be the person who makes that possible. One reason their connection works so well is that they come from similar backgrounds. They understand the land, the lifestyle, and the culture that surrounds ranch life. That shared understanding can bring people closer without them even realizing it. And if Casey really does begin working with Tom on the cattle business, then he and Dolly will naturally spend more time together. More conversations, more quiet moments, and slowly that bond could grow stronger. This is actually a storytelling style that shows connected to Yellowstone use very well. Relationships often start quietly before they become important to the main plot. And right now, feels like the writers are carefully building that path for Casey and Dolly. But here's the interesting part. The show may not make things simple for them, because whenever a new relationship begins in this universe, there is almost always tension around it. And that tension could come from different directions. It could come from Casey's past. It could come from the dangerous situations he faces as a marshal. Or it could come from people around him who might have feelings he has not fully noticed yet. What episode 4 really did was introduce a possibility. A new chapter in Casey's life that fans did not expect to see so soon. At the same time, it also brought back the ranch atmosphere that many viewers felt was missing from Marshals. And if episode 5 continues building on this storyline, we might start seeing the show move closer to the emotional and family-driven drama that made Yellowstone so popular in the first place. So the big question now is simple. Is this just a small connection between two characters, or is the show quietly setting up Casey's next big relationship? Because if it is the second option, then what we saw in episode 4 might end up being the moment where everything began.